All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. First thing we're going to be talking about today is going to be about asymmetries within the market. We're going to be looking first at the papers by Akerlof and Spence. So let's go ahead and get started. In terms of the paper written by Akerlof, the paper is going to relate two different kinds of characteristics: quality and uncertainty. On one hand, you got the interaction of quality differences and uncertainty that could explain important institutions of the labor market. But on the other hand, the paper actually represents a struggling attempt to give structure to this statement. Business in underdeveloped countries is difficult. In particular, the structure for demand or for determining the economic cost of dishonesty. This economic cost of dishonesty we're actually going to be talking about here momentarily. But the idea in this Akerlof article is dealing with lemons. What's a lemon, right? What is purchasing a lemon? Probably the first thing that comes to your mind is the purchase of a car. So let's actually draw this. I'm not a talented artist, so bear with me. So let's call this market for lemons. We have a car here. It's going to look more like a Flintstone car, I feel, than anything. We have a car. Let's say we have two cars. Okay, let's call this car a good car. This one a bad car. Okay, so let's just kind of look at it this way. We've got a good car and we've got a bad car. They could either be new or they could be used. So really we could have four different kinds of cars. We could have, new down here. I'm not going to draw another car. I'm just going to put ditto marks here. And then we could have used. So really we have four different types of cars, okay? So four different types of cars. Again, with ditto marks because I can't draw. So there's new, used, good, and bad cars, and any one of these could be a lemon, right? Consumers are going to buy these cars without knowing about the background of the car, at least not fully, right? They're going to know the consumers are going to buy these cars whether or not they know that they're a lemon. There's a probability Q. I'm going to draw a line here, kind of box our cars in. There's probability Q that it's a good car. Then there is probability Q minus 1, or I'm sorry, 1 minus Q that it's a lemon. So when we go and we purchase this car for the first time, we're going to make up these probabilities on our own, right? We're going to have probability Q that it's a good car. We're going to have probability, and we have the probability 1 minus Q that it's a lemon, right? So let's say we buy a good used car, and let's say that we have a probability Q of 80% that it's a good car, and then we have a probability of 1 minus 80%, so 20% that it's a lemon, right? So, but after owning this car for a while, what we're going to see is that the probability is going to change. Therefore, there is an asymmetry available in this particular situation. So an asymmetry is available. Available information has developed. The sellers may have more knowledge about the quality of the car than the buyers do, right? The sellers are trying to push these cars out. The buyers are trying to get these cars in, but the seller is going to have more information. What is an asymmetry? So I'm going to erase our car examples here. Now I'm actually going to write you in a bank, you and a loan officer. So let's say, I'll say me and a loan officer. So this is me. And this is the bank. If I go to the bank looking for a loan, So I go to the bank looking for a loan. If I tell them, hey, I want $100,000 in order to buy a brand new house. Okay, I want $100,000 to buy a new house. But they actually they say, sure, go ahead. But they make it an unsecured loan. They don't put a deed of trust against any property at all. And instead, I take that $100,000 and go to Vegas and gamble it away. Guess what? That's called information asymmetry. That is where I know something that the bank doesn't know, but the bank is still going to give me that money. Okay. Back to our idea about cars. Good cars and bad cars still must sell for the same price, since it's impossible for a buyer to tell the difference between a good car and a bad car on the surface. It's apparent that a used car can't have the same valuation of a new car, because if it did, it would be advantageous to trade a lemon at the price of a new car and buy another new car at a higher probability, or Q, which we talked about, of being a good, and lower probability, of 1 minus Q of being bad. This is what's known as Gresham's law, that bad money, or in this case cars, but bad money tends to drive out good money. Bad cars are traded in, good cars are kept on the road. However, in this example, Gresham's law is not complete, as bad cars drive out the good, because they sell at the same price as good cars, which is similar with money, right? Because bad money drives out good money because exchange rates are even. So in Gresham's law, both buyer and seller should be able to tell the difference between good and bad money, unlike what we did in our car example. So now let's talk about the research methodology involved with the actual article. The author is going to use utility theory with 3 assumptions of the utility functions. First, without linear utility, one gets needlessly mired in algebraic complication. 2, the use of linear utility allows a focus on the effects of asymmetry, that idea of I know something you don't, of information. With a concave utility function, one would have to deal jointly with the usual risk, variance, effects of uncertainty. And then finally, the 2 variables being addressed have odd characteristics that are going to make them different, right? But each additional variable adds the same amount of utility as the first. So now let's talk about the major findings of the actual article. The author gives several examples as to how asymmetry is put into practice. Of these, I'm only going to talk about 2 of them just for time's sake, but of these are 4 that he talks about: insurance, employment of minorities, the cost of dishonesty, and credit markets in underdeveloped countries. So I'm going to talk about insurance and the cost of dishonesty. Insurance, particularly in health insurance, the question that is being asked is, why doesn't the price rise to match the risk, right? So the answer is that as price levels rise, the people who are insured, or who are insuring themselves, will be those who are increasingly certain that they will need insurance. The applicant can more easily assess the risk involved than the insurance company can, right? So like the actual applicant, if I am trying to buy insurance, clearly I'm not in the best of shape, but if I'm trying to buy insurance, I'm going to know more about myself than the insurance company will. Granted, they're going to have underwriters, but I could be the lemon for the insurance company. So the result is that the average medical condition of insurance applicants diminish. As that happens, the price of that insurance will rise. We see the following results. Policies are generally not available to applicants greater than 65. We still see that even today. The premiums are simply not worth it unless insurance is a must, which has been statistically proven. This is where the principle of adverse selection arises. Insurance, as medical insurance, is at least available to those who need it most. This is where the lemon of insurance comes into the contract of insurance. Like I said, I could be a lemon to the insurance company. As too many claims are made by the insured, the insurance contracts becomes a lemon to the carrier. Next, we talk about the cost of dishonesty. The market for a particular good can be completely washed out because of lemons. Dishonest dealings can completely drive out hard work or hardworking institutions, just because there's no longer a market for that. The cost is not just measured by how much the buyer was cheated, but rather the cost of loss incurred from driving legitimate business out of existence. So those are going to be our major findings in this article. And then the relation to other articles I found to be most interesting was Jonathan Levin's article about information in the market for lemons in the Rand Journal of Economics. He's going to aim to answer the question, do greater information asymmetries reduce the potential for realizing gains from trade or for trade? And in this article, he actually determines that to be the case. So with time kind of running out, let's move on to the Spence article. This deals with market signaling. So I'm going to pick up my marker, excuse me. Let's talk about market signaling. Market signaling. So, with market signaling, what is this? This article is going to help us build and define the term. The essay is going to address markets in which signaling takes place, in which the primary signalers are relatively numerous in the market, sufficiently in the market, and are sufficiently and infrequently that they are not expected and therefore don't invest in acquiring signaling reputations. Now, the author is going to focus mainly on the job market. Okay, the primary emphasis is placed on the definition of properties and signaling equilibria, the interaction of potential signals, and the allocation efficiency of the market. So let's talk about the research methodology. He talks very much about hiring as an investment under uncertainty. Employers are just not going to know how productive you're going to be just from a job meeting, right? Generally, well, not generally, you're going to have to be trained, right? So we're not going to know how productive you're going to be until much later down the line, right? So in order to employ you, there is going to be a gamble, right? There is going to be a gamble, almost like buying a lotto ticket. Some attributes of the candidate are fixed, while others are alterable. So let's actually give names to these, okay? So indices are going to be the attributes that are fixed. Signals are going to be those that are manipulated. There's really not anything that a manager can do about indices, but there are certain things that managers can do about signals. Applicant signaling are going to be things that the applicant can change in order to be more favorable for hire, such as education, right? If it, in fact, I'm looking to getting a doctoral degree. I hope to be, Dr. Michael Prentice one day, and that's one thing I hope to achieve is going to be a place in tenure promotion, things of that nature. So in terms of education, if there's a sufficient return in wages for higher education, there is a present signal which requires signaling cost or the cost of that education. A signal is not going to effectively distinguish one applicant from another unless the cost of signaling unless the cost of signaling are negatively correlated with the productive capacity. Okay, so now we go to the major findings. I want to draw something for you. This is called the feedback loop in the job market. So we have first, draw this a little bigger. Wish this board was kind of turned that way, but unfortunately I can't do that. This first one is employers' conditional probabilistic beliefs, which is then going to flow to offered wages as a function of signaling and indices. And that is then going to flow to That is then going to stay with me. So that's then going to flow to signaling decisions by applicants. I'm going to go over here. So signaling decisions by applicants. Which is going to give rise to signaling costs. I believe you can see that. Signaling costs. And then this is going to flow to our last component of the loop, which is going to be hiring and observation of the relationship between marginal product and signal. So we'll just call this hiring. Get a bigger board. Hiring, which is then going to flow all the way back to our first component here. So why draw this? What's the point? At some point in this loop, there's going to be signaling equilibrium. This is a set of components in the cycle that regenerate themselves, like offered wage schedules regenerating themselves. Equilibrium ought to be thought of as a set of beliefs that are confirmed or at least not contradicted by the new data at the end of the loop. So this is going to be a lot of what the major finding is going to be within the article, is that eventually there's going to be an equilibrium among this loop, because different components of these are going to shift over time, right? We're going to have new applicants come in that are better educated. They're going to have better ideas about how things are going to work. In relation to literature on financial economics, I chose to look at one article in particular. I mean, this is a very seminal article. It's been cited several thousand times, but I looked at the Hopkins article of job market signaling of relative position, or Becker married to Spence. This is going to compare Spence's model to Becker's marriage matching model. It asserts that Spence's model does not provide a complete picture of the labor market phenomena. For example, laborers or workers different quality. Firms are going to be different, in effect, identical, and offer, in effect, they're not going to be identical, and they're not going to offer the same kind of wages, right? So he was arguing that that Spence's framework was going to have to be modified ever so slightly in order to actually meet what the current conditions were. So that is going to be the end of this video for asymmetries. Thank you.